Hello, I'm Simon Hart, Lead International Partner at RSM UK, and welcome to our video recording as part of our UK to Global series, where we're giving UK middle market business leaders insight into international expansion areas and business growth. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Eileen Turcott from RSM International, who's the regional leader for Latin America. Hello, Eileen.
Hi, Simon. Thank you. It's good to be with you this morning.
It's good to have you with us. So look, I was looking at the whole region in terms of the size of the region. We know it's an expanse of geographies and countries, but I was really surprised that it accounts for some 8% of UK GDP. It's about $7.4 trillion of economies there, dominated by Brazil at 1.8 trillion, then Mexico at $1 trillion, and then we're into Argentina and Venezuela and Colombia. Some massive potential there for UK businesses, I would have thought.
Absolutely, and honestly, the pandemic has really slowed growth in Latin America. It was hit very hard. The region, it's still recovering, but the projections for growth in 2021 are very positive and optimistic. It was a fast growing region before the pandemic, and it will be again. The areas that you mentioned, the countries and geographies that you mentioned, they really seem to be reflected in RSM UK's client base. Countries like Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. We've seen a lot of activity between RSM UK and the middle market in general and those markets. And I think it is surprisingly a big proportion of trade because they've been aggressively pursuing trade agreements in many of those countries. So we expect it to continue to grow.
I think in a post-Brexit UK economy, those trade links are going to only go one way, and that's expand. It's interesting though when you look at the main sectors, when you break down those economic numbers. We're talking about oil and gas. Well, that's hardly a surprise. Food and food production, and also what I was surprised about, the third largest sector is digital and technology. And I would never have thought, and that's my naivety, I would never have thought of Latin America in terms of a digital tech space. What other ones are we? What other ones have we got over and above that?
Well, you hit on fintech is huge, especially in Brazil. It's 2020 was a record year for startups in Latin America. Despite the pandemic, it was still a record year for that. And there are hundreds of millions of people, and they're trying to get connected to global banking, to financial institutions overseas, the ability to invest and access their capital, and as private individuals and consumers and companies alike. So fintech, the companies that are able to bridge that population that is growing, it's a growing middle class, so there's more private capital. The companies that are able to get that right are going to be massively successful in this space. So fintech, we've seen many different startups in that area, and also the internet penetration is growing. So mobile phone usage is very high, but internet penetration across the entire region, it was already pretty good in Brazil and Mexico, but Panama and the rest of the region, Chile, Argentina, it's not surprising to me, but I can see how it would be. I think we're trying to change that mentality for Latin America, that it is a very sophisticated and developed region and many world-class cities so other sectors, I think, construction is a sector that is poised to have very high growth, higher than Asia and pretty much any other region in 2021. There's a lot of infrastructure to be built in Latin America. Healthcare is a sector that is growing. Compared to Europe and North America, Latin America, healthcare spending is pretty low. So there's been a lot of public and social pressure to have governments spend more on healthcare, and then technology and internet, renewable energy, all of these sectors are really booming.
So let's just recircle on that, because I think there's a number of things you said there I think are really exciting in terms of business opportunities for the UK middle market. So you mentioned about fintech. I think that as I mentioned earlier, that's a big surprise for me in terms of the expansion that's gone on there. I was really excited about true global cities that we're seeing in the region, and I think that's the other area, isn't it? Visit the region and see it for yourself
Yeah.
is the message, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it is really impressive. You just descending into Mexico City with its over 20 million people. It is a impressive and breathtaking experience. It's there a lot of opportunity, a lot of consumers, and for companies looking to invest in Latin America, in addition to just visiting, and obviously I'm biased, Simon, the culture is wonderful. It's a vibrant and relationship-based culture, and it's a great place to do business. But in terms of the workforce and the opportunity, Latin America has a young workforce. They have an educated workforce. I was reading up on some of these statistics. Obviously, countries like Japan have always been on the far end of the spectrum, with almost 30% of their population being over 65. Mexico is only 7% of its population over 65.
Wow.
Brazil and Peru have 8%. So compared to the UK, where it's 18%, they have a very young demographic. Their higher education, over 20% of the workforce or of the population in places like Colombia and Panama and Peru, in Bolivia, those numbers match a lot of the large economies like Germany and Spain. They're getting up there. They're getting up there. So I think people need to change their perception.
The mindset and the perception needs to also, yeah. So that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we've got a really global youth, younger workforce, well educated, expectant in terms of access to to all manner of things that you would find previously have been the purview of North America and Europe. So huge amount to go to. Construction you touched on, is that and renewables, are we talking about infrastructure construction projects or housing? What are we seeing there? Both.
Yeah, both. Infrastructure for sure. Chile is a great example. High-speed rails and infrastructure on trying to make the rest of the region more accessible. Infrastructure in Brazil and expansion out. Some of these cities are getting very crowded, and they're expanding out and sprawling out into space. It's that too, but also in general, it's got a lot of resources. It's very natural resource rich. So in terms of the construction sector, raw materials, I wouldn't say it's not just building in the region, but it's also connected to the construction sector globally. Mm-hmm. So the export of timber and copper and other natural resources from the region. So
okay, and can we just move on in the last couple of minutes, Eileen? Language barriers. I mean, it's predominantly Spanish, Portuguese. What I've been surprised at with that younger, more what I would call middle class, well-educated population is the number of English speakers, fluent English speakers in the region. Is that geographically across the board, or are you finding that in the main metropolitan areas of the larger cities?
It's funny. That's a great question, because I'm noted that as for UK businesses looking to expand, it is a barrier, especially because to turn the tables, less than, I think it was, last time I checked, it was 8% of Brits spoke Spanish or understood Spanish. So there's not a lot of Spanish speakers in Great Britain, but there are. English is growing and growing. So I lived in Chile in the early 2000s. And when I lived there, again, it was the younger schools. The schools and the governments are starting to push it more. And it's going to take a while. So English speaking across the region is pretty much the same. I would say there are certain cities where there's a lot of investment, and you might find more English speakers in terms of the local workforce. But it's growing. The government is putting a lot of work into this in many different geographies. They're growing, and as that foreign investment grows, more and more English speakers, we'll see that develop over time, and definitely the younger generation that's grown up with, a global media, global music and international films and the like. That's how I feel it's personally from my experience, I've seen it develop that way. But it is a challenge. Spanish is a predominant language of most of the region. There are only a handful of countries that don't speak Spanish, Brazil being one of them. But within RSM, you'll find that every firm has English speakers. So we've been able to mitigate that.
Fill the
that
gap
challenge.
as necessary.
Yeah, and we've been able to mitigate that.
And I suppose if you had to give one piece of advice to a middle market business leader in the UK that was thinking of expansion into your region, what would it be other than contacting the team in RSM? But what would it be in all seriousness?
I would say it's worth it. I would say to do your homework and to realize that, things do take a little bit more time. One of the biggest, experience, I guess, pieces of feedback or we get from clients is that, it does take more time to get things done in the region in the beginning, but it's worth it. So my one piece of advice is to do your homework, have an advisor that you trust and that will walk you through the process, and to just, set reasonable deadlines and expectations around timing, but it's definitely worth it. And for those companies that are in the right sectors and take advantage of this early, there's definitely a big upside and opportunity for a lot of growth.
Fantastic. Eileen, thanks very much for your insights there. I think it goes without saying to anyone viewing this is that if you want any more information, please contact RSM UK and we'll get you in touch with the right people in our Latin America region. Eileen, thanks again. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.